Right, okay.
So right, everyone. Sharav, and indeed, thanks to Stephen for the invitation. It's a delayed invitation because I think I was originally scheduled to speak in the summer when it was a lot warmer, but I took a surprise trip, an unexpected trip to Eretz Yisrael to see my mother-in-law, Sheriff Shlema. But at least now we've got the inclement weather to test my resolve and your resolve on turning up. A couple of years ago, or for a number of years, I had the pleasure of being the head teacher of the combined Stanmore and Edgware Ada, which obviously had some pupils from this shul and some from Stanmore. And one year I spoke in the shul at prize giving about a particular idea that I had. 3 years later, I spoke again at the prize giving, and a parent came up to me and said, "You know, you said exactly the same thing 3 years ago." And I was somewhat embarrassed, but admitted that may well have been a possibility. When I was thinking about speaking this week, I thought I would speak about, obviously, something about the Parsha. I thought I'd speak about something that could be dealt with on a morning audience when children are at school. I thought I'd speak about Yehuda and Tamar. And I looked at my notes and I saw last year in Edgware United, I spoke about that topic. But Baruch Hashem, I checked my notes, so I managed to change the contents. And at least I've now got a system to try and check these things. But what I want to do, we know we have not only the Parsha, we obviously know a number of the ideas around the Parsha, but we also have Hanukkah across us. And one of the things yesterday, I was involved in a meeting at Great Ormond Street where we were trying to plan activities for Hanukkah. I always find it fascinating that there was a meeting with 15 people attending on teams. 3 of us were Jewish. We had Muslims there, we had Christians there, all planning Hanukkah activities. And I was trying to explain that maybe we're having donuts, we need kosher, these sorts of ideas. But there seems to be a general view that we celebrate Hanukkah. So we're all dusting off our dreidels, we're all getting ready for the festive season. And I think maybe we have to remember that life is just like a dreidel. Sometimes it hands us a gimel and everything's very good and we're all very happy. Sometimes we get a hay and things are okay. Sometimes you get a nun and okay, break even, but sometimes, of course, we roll a shin and then everything is not quite as we'd like it to be. And if you look at the Parsha, Yosef's life is very much like a dreidel. But he only seems to get gimels and shins. Possibly like some of us when we play. He seems to, things either go very well for Yosef or things go incredibly badly for Yosef. And to a certain extent, his story is the story of our history over the years, that we often have gimels and shins with very little in between. At the beginning of his life for Yosef, everything's wonderful. He's the favorite son of Yaakov. Everything is perfect. He gets given this wonderful coat. Everyone knows about that. And then suddenly his world completely falls apart. We know he gets thrown into the boil, he gets thrown into the pit, and he gets sold into slavery. Then afterwards, again, what happens to him? He gets a relative state of success where he gets promoted and he gets put in charge of a very important household in Egypt. Again, what happens? That success is shattered when the wife of the house tests him and for a whole year tries to seduce him. And when he passes the test, you'd have thought, okay, you deserve something better. You deserve a little bit of peace and quiet. What happens? He's then thrown into prison for 12 years. So things really happen to him. He has a tough life, at least at the start. The Mesilas Shalom, and I started thinking about Swedish ideas when I was walking to shul in the snow. You start thinking about Eastern Europe and the veils of Eastern Europe. The Mesilas Shalom really came up with an interesting question based on the Parsha. If you look at Yosef's life and the way he went downhill and everything happened to him, and he ended up being thrown into prison, how was he able to give himself how on earth was he able to strengthen himself during this period? Because as far as he knew, his family had forgotten about him. His brothers had sold him, been involved in his sale, and that's a whole separate issue, whether they sold him, whether they're involved in the sale, and their whole involvement in that transaction. But it seemed to him that no one was looking for him. They'd completely and utterly forgotten about him. And after all his efforts to do something right, to do something good, he ends up being thrown into prison. So I think for many people, you'd say, oh, okay, I've had this with being holy. I've had this with being good. I'm just giving up. But that wasn't what happened to Yosef. And maybe if we all try to understand how Yosef succeeded even during his darkest hours, his most challenging times, then maybe it can strengthen all of us and give us some hizat going forward, not only as individuals, but as a community throughout the world. So the Nesiva Shalom points out, I think, a very interesting nuance with regards to Yaakov Avinu's refusal to be confronted after Yosef's, in inverted commas, death. We're told that Yaakov refused to be comforted. I remember discussing this at length with my teacher, Rabbi, and he was, his wife passed, and he was talking about how he couldn't be comforted. If you look at the pasuk, it actually says he refused to be comforted. He didn't say he couldn't be comforted, but he said he refused to be comforted, which seems to imply that his state of mourning was actually intentional. Now, that in itself is a little bit difficult to understand. Why on earth would he intentionally not want to be comforted? We're always told, if there's Hashem b'simcha, you should worship Hashem in joy. You should serve Hashem in joy. Normally, the way of tzaddikim, one would have thought, is to be joyous. You see lots of tzaddikim with smiles on their faces. I think for many of us, our fondest memory of Daniel Tzaddik was his smile and the warmth of that smile. But normally for a tzaddik, we would say that when things don't go your way, you accept reality, you move on. That's the whole idea of Emunah. What happened to Avram after Sarah passed away? We're told, Avram, he got up. Immediately, he got up and went on his way. Why on earth didn't Yaakov do this? And we're also told that Yaakov received nothing from the Shekhinah, no presents from the Shekhinah, while Yosef was absent. Rashi explains this. Now, surely, if you're a tzaddik who's totally connected to Hashem, when you lose that connection, you're going to feel something. You're going to be in difficulty. And you're going to realize that if you're mourning, deliberately mourning, you're losing this connection. You should do something about it. Now, according to the Nesiva Shalom, he says that Yaakov actually knew that Yosef was ill. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what he was going through. But he knew that whatever was happening in the circumstance must be horrible, and that he was in some place of impurity. But there was nothing Yaakov could do for Yosef to help him endure what he was going through. To continue to believe in Yosef, continue to daven for Yosef, and to never forget about him. And by never giving up on Yosef, he did the only thing he could actually do to help his son. Now, Yosef, of course, didn't know about this. All he knew, Yaakov had moved on with his life. He'd got up, he'd carried on, he'd forgotten about it. Then, if you think about it, in Yosef's darkest hour, and this is brought down in the Gemara and Sota, certainly opinions brought down in the Sota, after a year of temptation, Yosef was actually planning to give in. Had this woman who was tempting him every day, and he was planning to give in. And there, according to the Gemara and Sota, there is a dispute between Rav and Shmuel about the whole idea that in the pasuk it says Yosef was going into the house to do his work. What was he going to do? There's one opinion that says he was actually going to go to his office. There's another opinion that says no, he was actually going to give in to the temptation. What stopped him? We're told very clearly that at that moment an image of his father came and appeared to him in the window. And when that happened, Yosef rediscovered his inner strength and he refused. Now, according to the Nesiva Shalom, the idea that he's brought down is that Yaakov, through his belief in Yosef, enabled Yosef to believe in himself and thereby have the strength to emerge from the darkness, to emerge from the sin, the temptation. Through the vision of his father, Yosef was reminded that he's got a father who's alive. He's got a father who's thinking about him, connected to him. The Pasuk uses an interesting word, v'yimo'ein. He refused. And it's very interesting, that word only appears twice in the Torah. And the root letters of Yimo'ein are exactly the same root letters of the word emunah, faith. It was Yaakov's ability and continued belief in Yosef, to not give up on Yosef, that gave Yosef the ability to, Vayomein, to have faith in and refuse to give up on himself. It's us having faith in others that they will do the right thing. It will give them the ability to turn the corner and do the right thing. We're told that Yosef saw his father's image in a window. What's the word for a window? Halon. The letters of Halon are, as you probably know, the initial letters of the word Bad Lekner Hanukkah. To light the candle, the oil for Hanukkah. When we light the nerot, when we light the candles in the windows of our homes, we can also tap into Hashem's belief in us. According to the Rambam in Pashat Halotah, we're told that Aaron HaKohen is the inner source of the Yom Tov of Hanukkah. That's why we have the connection with the Kohanim. What was Aaron known for? He was known that he loved everyone. Kol HaBriot. And he brought them closer to the Torah. The word briot, creatures, implies the lowest of people. His love was for absolutely everyone. If you're alive, Aaron loved you. All creatures. Even if you had nothing else going for you, Aaron still loved them. Believed in them. He believed that everyone could be good. Everyone had absolutely amazing potential. And that was really what could bring them closer to Torah. And that was his idea. They saw that Aaron believed in them, and that would bring them closer to themselves. And I think that's really part of the message that we have to have for Hanukkah. Do I have a few more minutes or not? Okay, I just want I'll share a short question. Really, this whole idea that of Aaron HaKohen believing in us, and the whole idea of Yaakov believing in Yosef, I think is absolutely important as a message to get across in our communities, in our families. And I think it's whatever people do, however they fall on, off derech, around the derech, they can't even find the derech. I think it's up to us to actually continue to have faith in people, to show them that we love them and care for them. And I think this is such an important message. I just want to share a story that I know the time is a little bit longer than I want to be, but it's a story of the grandson of the Amshinova Rebbe. I think the Amshinova Rebbe himself was an incredible individual. And I often like referring to his stories. But this is a story of his grandson, Reb Shimon Shenovitzer. Now, Reb Shimon was, again, a tzaddik. Grandfather like that, I think it's better. It's no alternative, really. But he lived in a small village in Eastern Europe. And he had a chassid who was the only Jew in this particular village. And this Jew had a daughter. And sadly, almost inevitably, this girl got involved with a non-Jewish man. And as often happened in Eastern Europe, wasn't the nicest individual. Not only was he not Jewish, he was also apparently an abuser, and he was an alcoholic. He was not the nicest individual at all. But sometimes people, if they feel that they can't find anyone better, if they don't think highly enough of themselves, they'll tolerate the worst thing. And indeed, she planned to marry this man. His family actually had a requirement, though. They said, our son is not going to marry out. Alavai Jewish families always said the same thing, but this Polish family said, our son is not going to marry out. So they said, if you want to marry her, she's got to convert. So she went to a convent to be taught to convert. And the Chassid went to his Rebbe and said, what are we going to do? I've got to do something. It's the worst thing that could ever happen in my life. My daughter's going to marry out. I need you, Rebbe, to help me. Now, the Hasidim of Amshinov are well known for their Ahavat Yisrael, their love of their fellow Jews. The Rebbe asked the man for the location of the convent, and he took his gabbai and he traveled there. And when he got to the convent, there used to be a convent like this, interesting enough, in Golders Green with a high wall around it. I think it's probably a shul now, actually, but there used to be, I don't know if you remember, in Golders Green, there used to be a convent with a big high wall. You couldn't get in, couldn't get out. There was one door you could get in was really locked. And I know that was my parents used to park in front of there, and we used to go shopping in Golders Green, so we used to see them. So the Rebbe went outside and he noted that there was this wall, but he saw that there was a nun going into the convent. So he gave this nun a note, and it says, I, Rabbi Shimon, will be waiting for you at the corner. And he said, give this to the girl. And the Rebbe waited, and the story says the Rebbe waited there for 3 days on the corner. And during the entire time, he never left the corner. He didn't go away to daven. He didn't go away to do anything. And now we always stress the importance of going to shul and davening with a minyan. It was a conversation I had with a parent in Great Walnut Street last week that was a man who was asking me where the nearest minyan was. Then he said, is it more important for me to stay at the bedside of my son who's in a coma, or more important to go and daven with a minyan? We're discussing this. The whole idea that there are times you don't leave the important thing. So the Rebbe did not leave the street corner. He didn't go to shul, he didn't do anything. And on the night after the third day, the girl came out to him and told the Rebbe, let's run, let's keep running. And after they'd gone and they put a distance between themselves and the convent, the Rebbe said to her, look, how on earth did you get the strength to leave? You were all geared up to marry this man, you've been in the convent for a while. How on earth did you get the strength to leave when it was quite clear you were ready to convert? And she said that she knew how great the Rebbe was from her father's descriptions. And she said that she had the strength to leave because she knew the Rebbe would never leave without her. And I think that's the idea that we have to take away. When people know and feel the strength in someone, whether it's a son, whether it's a Rebbe, whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's Hashem, when you've got that strength, when you know someone is there for you, they won't leave, they'll hang on. And I think as we light the Licht of Hanukkah starting Sunday night, we remember that Hashem loves us and will be with us, even in moments of darkness. He will believe in us and never stop believing in us and never leave us behind. But I think we've also got to project that message around the Kehillah, around our families, around absolutely everyone. It's not just phoning up to people and saying, are you safe in the snow? Yes, that's important. We have got to project that image of saying to everyone, we care about them. There's someone on the Zoom call who I owe a call to show that I care for you. And yes, I do care for you. You know I care for you. And please God, I will bring you before Hanukkah. But I'm seeing his name here that is you reminding me that. But we've got to tell people we care for them. And I think that's the thing. However part of people stray away, it's still part of us. It's still part of our family. So maybe that's the message. Asha, the message. good and safe.
Thank you so much. Talk, Rabbi Wilkinson. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you everyone for joining us on Zoom. We will publicize details for next week. Next week we'll be signing a bit longer, so maybe 5 or 10 minutes later. So I'll say goodbye to the Zoom people, and then I will do the finish off everything here in the shul. Goodbye, Zoom.